Hope you can hear me at the back there. Are the slides visible? Is it okay? So this slide, I just want to keep it on the screen for a while because it lists the resources that I will be using and that you can refer to later. So there is some source code that I have published to two repositories on GitHub. These are public repositories. You can clone them, fork them, work through this. Some of you have been at some of the workshops we've had today. How many of you? Quick show of hands. Anyone that has been at the workshops? So the format of this session is somewhat different. While we, I think it says that this is a workshop. While you are free to, fetch the source code and work on it through the course of the session. But, we don't really have, I will not be able to pause and help you out if you're getting stuck with it during this session, right? Because we have a short time. So once again, my name is Krishnan Mani. I'm a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. I'm based out of Pune. This is the first time I'm presenting to a large audience in Bangalore. So please feel free to interrupt, express your thoughts, comments, opinions. If you have a question, please make it as interactive as you want to, so that we can have a good session. So the format of this session is, I'm going to walk through some of the slides, and then I'll switch over to using my laptop and write some code which will spin up infrastructure. And by doing so, I will try and express some of the thoughts. If I can think of one or two things which you might take away from this session at the end of it, it's really, the first thing is, I recommend that you use an iterative approach, right? So you are probably already familiar with using an iterative approach. And to work with infrastructure just the same way that you work with software, right? So use an iterative approach, evolve your software one step at a time. That will help you really create infrastructure as code. And the second thing is, how many of you are actually users of CloudFormation, heavy users, or have you started using CloudFormation? Are you considering using it? Yeah, fair number, but then I guess fair number that is also not yet using CloudFormation. Is that accurate? Fair number of you who are not using it, right? So hopefully, I guess the other aspect that you might consider as a takeaway is that hopefully you will feel comfortable enough and you will understand just about enough to start working and using CloudFormation and understanding how it works, what's the approach that you can use, what could be the, what are some of the areas that it is strong in, what are some of the limitations, right? And how you can actually start working with it and get good speed on using CloudFormation, confidence in terms of using CloudFormation, okay? So once again, those are the repositories. There are some short URLs. A formal definition, anyone? Sorry, I just put it up on the screen, but anyone who, why don't you, if you can talk about what comes to your mind when you hear the term infrastructure as code? Anyone? By writing code. So just a minute, I'll check if we are having mics to pass around. Excuse me? Microphone hai kya? Yeah, so you can ask for the microphone. I think gentleman here said it's like provisioning by writing code, right?
I don't have to wait for another department to set up the environment. I can do it myself as a developer. I can tear it down. It's pretty dynamic.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Anyone? Yeah, please.
Yeah, creating as a template, and then we can use that as a...
Yeah, creating as a template, right? Creating as a template, but today you will see, also hopefully you'll see that as your environment grows, probably you can't have one template, right? You're going to have a collection of templates, or you're going to have to use different approaches, right?
Another way is a consistent way I want to do it. So today, my team set it up. They have no set of steps. After some time, they will forget. So the consistency.
Yes, so you want to be able to reproduce the environment in the same way. Every time that you want to recreate it, right? It should behave the same, it should look the same, it should meet the requirements, right?
Yeah. And also the scale. Today I code for 10 servers. I can use the same code for 1,000 servers. So scalability, I can just use the same code to provision those servers.
Sure. Yeah, so those are all great ways of thinking about it. I think the formal one, I don't think like this is a mature area yet to have formal definitions, but one way of thinking about it is borrowing the techniques and tools that we are familiar with from software development, because obviously software development is a mature, much comparably more mature science today, right? And so you are borrowing techniques, practices, and tools, right? So for example, do you check in, what do you check into version control? Do you put source code, or do you put binaries, or both? What's the kind of practice that you follow? So you typically check in source code, right? Why? Because you know that there is a mechanism where, given a particular version of source code, right, there is a reliable way to compile it or convert it into the binaries or other outputs, right? And you know that given that particular version, the binaries will always behave exactly the same, correct? So that's a technique that you are used to from software development, right? How could you bring that to actually managing infrastructure? So that's one way of thinking about it. Why? I think you already spoke about some of the things. Incidentally, Amazon Web Services has published how many of you have heard of this term? Well architected. So this is Amazon Web Services has published a framework and some white papers, etc., where we are trying to communicate to our customers what it means to be well architected. Okay? Because there are common themes when customers come to us saying we have these issues, and we see that if you follow certain principles, then you are unlikely to have those kinds of issues. So if you Google it, you can easily find, just Google AWS well architected, and we talk about 4 pillars, and those are the pillars. Security is always, as we say, it is job 0, always, right? And then there is how reliable is it? Does it perform what you want it to do with relatively fewer resources, right? And is it optimized for cost? So that's the 4 pillars that we talk about when we say well architected, okay? And also when you really want to deploy very rapidly and you want to manage a large number of resources, right? Because with the cloud, this is already very possible, right? It's very likely that once you have your first environment, your first application up and running, right? You can easily actually scale out and start adding more complexity to it. So there is a very good reason why AWS actually enables this approach, right? And what is that reason? Typically your questions are around how do I create and configure all these resources? How do I do this? How do I bring them together? And as you might know, everything you perform on AWS, any service, everything is an API call, right? You can use those API calls at different levels, right? From a software perspective, you can have a low-level approach, which means you can, for example, directly make REST calls to the APIs, right? With the appropriate headers in terms of authorization, the appropriate request bodies, and so on. Or you could use the SDKs, or you could use the command line interface, or you could use some of our services, okay? Some of our services are designed to specifically help you just provision, deploy, manage, okay, and monitor all of the infrastructure. So there is a common, by the way, all these services, can you name some of the services that are